You're listening to the Diginauts on the Good Talk Podcast Network.
Coming up on episode 9 of the Diginauts, we cover a lot of territory. We're going to be discussing the proposed first human head transplant.
And how ATMs can really give you insight into the demographics of the city.
And we also have some updates on that Youth v. Gov story from one of the legal advisors for the kids who brought the lawsuit. So stay tuned. All that and more coming right up on the Diginauts. Society.
The future.
Morality.
Disruption.
Policy.
Humanity.
Innovation.
Technology.
Morality. The future. The law. Humanity. Society.
It did freak out my wife initially.
Diginauts.
Hello, my name is Darren.
I'm Eric.
And we are the Diginauts. We're here with episode 9. Our top of mind story today, and it's kind of a pun, top of mind this time. This is a hard one to get into, to even imagine. There's this surgeon, and he is hell-bent on performing the first ever head transplant. The story is it's an Italian neurosurgeon by the name of Sergio Canavero, and he has a human volunteer who is ready to participate. It's a Russian computer programmer by the name of Valery Spiridonov. I don't know about my Russian pronunciation.
Yeah, needs work.
I said it with confidence, though, so that's what matters. Anyway, these guys are 100% charging forward with this, and kind of our take on it, our angle on it is the fact that they have decided that they're going to use VR, virtual reality, to prep the patient for the experience of having a brand new body.
So, I guess, what would he be virtually experiencing compared to his current state?
Yeah. Well, so this takes us to the whole, what would make you be willing to have your head be on another body? You know, why do you volunteer for such a procedure?
Yeah,
the patient here is he is suffering from a debilitating disease that essentially causes his musculature to waste away. And because of that, he is, he's kind of in a no-lose situation. Well,
he's going to lose his body.
He's going to lose his body. But the thing is, he's going to lose his body one way or the other.
Right.
He's kind of beaten the odds by living this long anyway. He's 30. And he, typically people who have this condition don't last as long as he has. So he's going to die from this at some point. So the idea is, may as well go ahead because...
Pun intended.
Brutal. Because perhaps he has a chance at a better experience this way. Now, this isn't entirely a new story. It's been a while that they've been talking about doing this. There's some different scientists who have expressed interest. They're doing different experiments on animals to varying degrees of success. What's disturbing to me is the amount of evidence being provided is slight. This doctor, he's there's videos out there. You can watch them. They're a little disturbing, where one seems to be him talking straight to the potential patient.
Right. The rat somewhat squiggling on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, he's like, he's talking to the guy and he's like, well, Siri, as you can see, this rat is totally fine. And the rat is kind of like kicking and limping. And
dragging its entire body across the ground.
Right. And then he says, we were watching bits and pieces of this video before we started recording tonight. And he's like, yeah, so then we performed it on, was it the dog or the
no, a monkey.
Yeah, monkey. So we performed it on the monkey, and everything went fine. Now, there was no video. There was just a picture of a monkey with, sewing marks all the way around his neck. Very Frankenstein style. followed up with and then the monkey was fine, everything worked great, and then we had to euthanize him, of course. Right? So if you're the dude, how are you like, oh, cool, you killed the monkey because you wouldn't want him to live that way? But that's what you want to do with me.
I mean, I think this dude, to your point, like, he's living a death sentence, and I think he's opting for a chance to extend his life. I mean, I think clearly, and I would be wondering, I guess the muscle disease doesn't impact his jaws, his eyelids.
I mean, I looked at it. It said Verdnig-Hoffman disease, which is a rare form of spinal muscular atrophy. From what I had read, it indicates that, a lot of times, again, you wind up dying as a baby. That everything kind of affects you throughout the whole body. But we're also looking at photos of the potential patient, and it looks like there's been a lot of effect on his body and maybe not as much on his head.
Right.
So, maybe that's kind of part of his luck, if you will, on how long he's lasted with this condition. So, I mean, the interesting thing is they're trying to find a place to do this. It's an Italian surgeon, a Russian patient. They're thinking maybe the UK is where they're going to perform it, or at least that's what he's been saying. The surgeon is kind of a little haphazard with his presentations and everything. He gives a TED talk or a TEDx talk.
He references Frankenstein.
Well, and he holds up a bunch of spaghetti. Like,
right.
The nerves are basically like this, which, okay, they kind of look like spaghetti if you look at a nerve, but no, they're not basically like that. And I guess it would be like a 36-hour surgery. They have to connect everything, right? They got to get
I believe it.
All the pipes and all the wires have to.
Imagine if someone just crossed, like,
nerves wise. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to get every nerve to line up to the proper nerve in order to have any hope at semblance of things being controlled later. I mean, you got to do the basics too, right? Of the heart and lungs have to be going in the right place.
There's a lot of moving parts.
There's a lot of moving parts. Well, and obviously there would be many surgeons involved. There's a Chinese surgeon who has supposedly been doing a lot of like this surgery on mice, who has volunteered to assist. So there's a lot of people talking about it, and the articles that we've been reading are very like, wait, this is still happening. But what got us thinking about it is the Science Alert article that from this week talking about the fact that they're still planning to do this, and they're using virtual reality to prepare him for it.
So that he can experience a functioning body?
Yeah. So the basic idea is, I mean, and here's where it gets really disturbing, right? The sort of American opinion on this is that it's so out there in terms of whether or not we should be doing this at all, that they really, aren't supporting it. The quote from the surgeon that sets it to a new level of like, wow, is, fusing a head with a separate body, including spinal cord, jugular vein, etc., could result in a hitherto never experienced level and quality of insanity.
I guess, my question to him would be, why does he think that?
To the surgeon,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, I mean,
clearly he hasn't done it.
I think
he hasn't experienced it. I
think the idea is, let's be aware of the fact that this ain't natural, right? And who knows what's going to happen.
So I guess, does this man get a new identity? Is he still, whatever his name is?
Well,
or does he hyphenate?
I think the the matter of whether the driver's license belongs to the head or to the wallet that later gets attached to the head is not the matter at question, at least for the first, couple surgeries done this way.
Well, let's say years down the road, he survives, right? He's in
and they perfect the
same
surgery.
head on new body, and he's the first guinea pig, so to speak. It worked.
Right.
4 years later, he's driving a non-autonomous car, and his right foot plants the gas.
Right.
And he kills 5 people in a grocery store.
Was it the head or the body that was responsible?
Or who's to blame?
Well, we can tuck that into the autonomous car ethics that is brewing out there as well. But I mean, again, so the question of the VR, why there's sort of the potential for insanity. I think the idea is that I'm not sure if it's an American or a British doctor who gave that quote. Christopher Hooton at The Independent, I'm looking at in the Science Alert article. I think he's thinking this is so cutting edge is not even the right word, right? This isn't pioneering. This is borderline mad science. That it's so borderline mad science that he's just trying to raise the potential repercussions that could be involved. And perhaps this is the surgeon attempting to counter that. You're right. It's going to be disorienting. Let's prep him. So they're putting him in the VR situation. I would assume, if you have a fully functional VR, that you could have, the experience of walking about at least, so he could be training his brain to be thinking okay, I'm commanding my legs to do this and that. Right.
I mean, I've definitely seen VR in cases where people have lost limbs. It helps them with the, people who lose limbs, they still sometimes have the ghost feeling of that limb.
Right.
So, and by seeing that, you basically fool your body into thinking the limb is still there, and that ghost feeling goes away.
Really?
Yeah.
So why does that? I mean, if anything, I would think the brain would be there's my arm, it's still there, so you'd have more ghost feeling. It's like
interesting.
Kind of therapy,
I don't know why it works, but I think it ultimately fools the brain, thinking the limb's back, where it never left, so to speak, and
weird.
Yeah.
Well, and I think with this patient, there was one reference to him not having walked in his adult life, which implies that he had some amount of motor function in his youth, which, perhaps might make him a better candidate than somebody who'd never walked, right? In terms of being able to do stuff. But
so I guess, I wonder what that VR would be his, a POV of a body walking.
I would think it would have to be. I mean, look, here's the thing. This is yet another place that this doctor hasn't released the best of details in terms of the overall plan. Supposedly, this fall, he is giving a little bit more of a look at exactly what we're going to expect here. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, we'll keep an eye on this story. I know I'm not going to volunteer. It would take a lot. But look, there's been plenty of technologies that people have, looked down their nose at, and then they turned out to be the future. So who knows? That being said, the track record here has not been established, and
not good.
There's a lot of doctors who are, they quote in the Independent, they quote the director of medical ethics at NYU, who says that this doctor is, quote, nuts.
But with risk comes rewards.
Well, yeah, I mean, at least we're in a situation where the first human that would undergo this is, again, sort of got nothing to lose.
Yeah,
it's a
win-win for him.
Well,
you might as,
you say that. However, again, to go back to this NYU doctor, they think that head transplants would end up being overwhelmed with different pathways in chemistry than they're used to, and they'd go crazy. Like, it's not just the VR thing. It's like a chemical issue of like these two systems just don't go together. It talks about a head transplant performed on a monkey in 1970. The monkey lived, but only for 8 days, with the body rejecting the new head and the monkey being left unable to breathe and unable to move because the spinal cord and head and body were not connected properly. Right? So here's hoping at least that even if this doctor is nuts, at least he's done his research and he can, get enough of it right so that, the patient has an okay experience overall. Because, it sure seems like something that should wait until the technology gets a little further along to me. But, as you say, this is how advances happen. So we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll if there's any developments, we'll bring them back here. Hey, Eric, guess how many people have gone to iTunes and left a rating and a comment for the Diginauts?
16.
Good guess. You're not guessing. The correct answer was not enough. Not enough people have done it. This is kind of like a PBS pledge drive. We will shut up about it as soon as enough of you have done it to bump us up into the iTunes new and noteworthy section. That's what we really need in order to get the word out about this podcast. If you're listening, if you enjoy what we're doing, absolutely go to the ads, go get your PBX in the cloud from Grasshopper. We would love for you to support them and support us, but there is nothing you could do that would help us out more than going to iTunes right now, leaving a quick little comment that lets other people know that you're enjoying this podcast.
So let's talk about the future in the future file.
Future file!
Yes, indeed. So
Is this story less creepy than the last one?
not sure. It depends. Depends who you ask. There's no surgery involved,
Well,
but
then I'll take it.
it can reveal a lot of things. So you can imagine things like ATMs, computers, and whatnot, especially ones that are shared amidst the public in a given city or state. A lot of different materials, ranging from skin to bacteria to food to other, samples, so to speak, wind up on those keypads, on the screens and whatnot. So some enterprising researchers have realized that one way to really understand, more about a city is to analyze what's on these ATM keypads.
And do DNA analysis of the
DNA,
humans?
Exactly. DNA, you can find out what people are eating. You can find out things like cleanliness or not cleanliness. You name it.
Wow. So are we talking about demographic information or health and safety, to help track diseases spreading? What's the point? What are they trying to gain by doing a Gattaca of, right? Because that's what this reminds me of, is that Ethan Hawke movie where in the future your identity was tied to your DNA and he was posing as somebody else, and so he had to have a little vacuum cleaner with him at all times so that after he used the keyboard he could come by and scrape up his skin cells and everything like that, right? So this is kind of at the citywide level, they are coming in, trying to gather this evidence and do an analysis. What are they hoping to learn?
Yeah, I'd have to think about that more and even maybe reread the article. But, if you think about it just from a personal level, I don't think people realize that this can be done.
Right.
Even with, what has been done with DNA, what has been done in the context of, crime scenes. But, when I touch an ATM, I don't... Well, now I do, but historically, I'm not worried about people finding out things about where I live.
See, I constantly live in a world of retracing my steps and making. I imagine the CSI guys coming behind me and spraying bottles of, fingerprint detector everywhere I go. I don't know why. That's just kind of the land of paranoia I live in.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's interesting. I guess my thing about it's similar to other things we've talked about in the past, Google Now always listening, Siri listening, Alexa listening. People don't realize that these conversations are being captured. Same way here, like you're leaving things behind, remnants of yourself, remnants of the environment, and people can glean disparate things from it as a result. So to me, it's almost like the in real life version of that, you know?
So I'm going to go ahead and call it creepy.
I'm not saying it's normal.
It's not sew your head on somebody else's body creepy, but
no, but it's. I think it's surprising.
So
People don't think about these things.
Are they using microbes more than DNA, or is it the DNA of the microbes, or it's both, right?
I think it's both. I mean, like DNA of the people, bacteria that is their hair and whatnot.
Huh. I'm not sure what's to be. I mean, I'm trying to think, because with any of these stories, my immediate thing is like, okay, what's the application, right? So, and on some level, you do pure science just for the sake of like, let's learn what we can learn,
right?
But I'm an engineer, not a scientist, right? So I want to apply it and turn it into something. And so, I hear about something like this, and I'm trying to envision like, if you were regularly analyzing ATMs.
Well, if I'm a bank, if I want to know more about my customers, maybe I swab the ATM pad every once in a while and analyze who's visiting.
So you literally, we're literally talking demographics here, right? They're gathering.
That's an aspect of it, absolutely.
Okay. But why, a bank doesn't care who ate yogurt, right? Like... Or do they? Is that the future? Are we getting to this level of like, it's almost like the Facebook retarget, right? Like they can sell that information to advertisers and be like, well, 95% of our, people who used an ATM had coffee that morning. So Dunkin' Donuts should advertise on our ATM.
Or have a insert into our statements.
Oh my goodness. At some point, since we've started doing this show, I just envision a dystopian future in which we're pretty much, held still with advertising forced into our eyeballs via every technology possible.
Yeah, I think I've taken it to a different path, but in reality, I think the initial focus was, you can find out a lot about people based on the remnants that they leave behind. The crux of it was definitely not from a marketing perspective, but as you can imagine, it can be very revealing, especially an ATM. Only typically are regional in nature and not necessarily national.
Right.
Sure, people are traveling and whatnot, but it'll probably be more indicative of that local area versus.
And that's the other thing that it made me start to think about is like voter polling and all that. Just coming out of the,
swab some of those.
Right? You're getting a sense of there's got to be a fairly big crossover between people who vote and people who can use an ATM, right? Like
right.
Kids are not included. So
sure.
You're not finding out about, you're finding about the adults
right.
In a given community. I don't know where this goes and what the sort of like application is. There's a lot of things where I can kind of quickly jump into, okay, if I were starting my own startup today and I had this technology, go.
To me,
what
it's
you would
like,
try to sell, and this one's a little trickier.
Is it more accurate than a census? Who knows?
Right. Yeah, that'd be interesting to see that comparison. Once again, it's the future file, so we'll have to be paying attention to what they ultimately find out about it.
And be sure to wipe your ATM.
I'm just going to wear gloves everywhere from now on.
I'm going to call you OJ.
You should not do that.
Are you running out of phone numbers? Is your business receiving so many calls that you need disparate extensions? Well, you should use grasshopper.com. So if you want to learn more, go to goodtalknetwork.com, go to ads, and click on the Grasshopper banner ad. And once you do that, you can easily start to sign up and basically get a phone system in the cloud.
All right, it's time for segment 3. Segment 3, we're introducing a brand new segment. It's called If You Had to Choose. And you do.
You must.
You must choose. So what we're going to do is we're going to present you with a set of choices based on technology events and happenings in current current I just said current events. You must choose between them, and each time we bring you this segment, that'll be a little bit different take for what we're looking for. So sometime it might be like, which of these gives you the most hope, or which of these, creeps you out the most, or which of these is, the story where technology sounds the most like magic, whatever the situation may be. So this week, we're going to look at 3 stories, each of which has something to do with privacy. So if you had to choose, which of these frightens you the most with regard to your privacy? The first one comes from our good friends at Snap. Well, I was about to say Snapchat, but they're now called Snap. Snap Incorporated, or just
Snap?
Just Snap. So Snap is bringing. This is not super new news, but there was an article in Mashable that's kind of my like, oh yeah, okay, there's a new angle on it. They are addressing the privacy concerns of Snap's new spectacles. Now, this isn't a new thing, right? We saw Google Glass a couple years ago.
Right. This is like the Fisher-Price version.
That's a wonderful summary, right? This is the Fisher-Price Google Glass. Because Google Glass was a little bit more, hey, developers, we want you to go out there and make cool interfaces and apps that connect to the Google environment. And
plus, it looked awkward. Like,
it did. It definitely looked like it was from a sci-fi movie. Well, but you put your finger on it when you said that this really comes down to kind of a Fisher-Price thing, because if you look at the Snap spectacles, they look like children's sunglasses.
It looks like straight out of Mattel, like Ken or Barbie's sunglasses. Big, that you
bright
just put
yellow.
On.
Well, I think this is probably a savvy move on the part of Snap, that they're trying to actively be not Google Glass, right? And they've kind of looked at some of the privacy side of it. They've said, all right, we're going to put these big, clear, obvious cameras on it. The cameras are going to light up, or I don't think they flash, but I think you see a light that kind of indicates, okay, the thing's on, right? And then what they're doing, I think where Google was attempting to make a $1,000 device that would tie. The price point was going to come down eventually. They only really ever did beta, to my knowledge. Where they were attempting to have something that tied into their ecosystem, the Snap device is really a little bit more like, hey, use this with Snapchat, right?
Yeah, it's a companion product.
Right. And so the price point is significantly lower. The overall, target is different. And I don't know, maybe this is proof that I'm old, but I don't see the appeal.
I'll return your pair that I bought.
Oh, man. So the obvious potential here for privacy invasion is if somebody's going around wearing glasses and has the ability to take your picture, take video of you. For right now, my understanding is they're taking 10-second videos at a time. That they could be taking video that you don't want to give them permission to take.
Right.
And it's pretty instantly moved up to the cloud. They have to take a second step to publish it. But, that's already... The fact that the video exists is perhaps more than I would care to have done for me. So there's all sorts of we could do an entire segment on this, but this is the first of our if you had a choice, which of these, frightens you the most in terms of potential technology invasion. Next. Yeah,
the second, increasingly almost every device that you use or own or is near you can ultimately turn into a device that's spying on you.
Right.
And in this latest example, researchers in Israel basically developed code, proof of concept, and it works, where they could basically demonstrate that they could hijack someone's earphones and ultimately turn them into microphones to capture any audio in the room.
Right.
Which is pretty powerful.
Yeah, well, and if you look at the electronics behind it, there's not that much difference between a speaker and a microphone.
Right.
At the end of the day, both are devices that turn sound, which is vibration, into an electronic signal, right?
Yep.
And so the difference between a microphone and a speaker is which direction you're making that translation.
Right.
So it's pretty easy and obvious, right? That you should be able to just turn her around and there you go. But I guess the sort of insidious part here is that they're full on setting up the phone to do it. I guess the question I would have here is why bother, right? The phone already has a microphone on it.
Well, this is
steal that.
I mean, fair point. I mean, this isn't necessarily tied to just the phone. So, like even if like the microphones or speakers have been removed, they can do this.
Well, if I've removed the speakers, but I nonetheless use that device for my iPod, I don't get it.
What do you mean?
Well, if I'm super, hey, don't spy on me, and I go into a device and I take stuff out, the speaker and headphones out, why do I still use earbuds on it?
I don't know.
Yeah. So there's open-ended questions that go into this one, but at the end of the day, maybe it's the kind of thing where like by putting it closer to your ears, they're getting a better sound than they would from having it like sort of hanging out in your backpack or whatever. I'm not sure. But see, this is why it's if you had to choose, right? Because just never go around somebody who has the sunglasses, or maybe this doesn't affect you because you don't listen to music out of your device or whatever. So we want to know, which one of these bugs you the most. And the third one is a story they've discovered that a Chinese phone manufacturer has accidentally left a backdoor.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Surprise.
In approximately, the guess, and they don't really know here, is that about 120,000 phones that were sold via Amazon and Best Buy had this backdoor in them where they were sending your phone records, perhaps your contact list, who you texted, back to some servers in China. Now, of course, the company has claimed that that was totally unintentional. It had something to do with an effort in China by a company to kind of like gain information, see what their customers were doing, offer better products, of course. So who knows the degree of intentionality here, but the fact of the matter is that a significant number of people went and bought phones, and that information has been relayed back despite their wishes.
Ouch.
So this is the thing. Maybe that doesn't bother you. Who cares?
Well, if you don't know, you're not going to be bothered.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And nobody knew that this was happening. And furthermore, it sounds like there wasn't actually even a way that you possibly could know that this was happening. So anyway, to me, it's kind of interesting to look at the three different stories, right? Some of these could bother you more than others. In theory, if somebody's going around using the Snap spectacles, you see a little light come on, and you know that it's happening, and so you can modify your behavior when that's happening.
I don't think everyone would recognize the fact that, like, oh, well, that's just some cute little kid with sunglasses that light up.
Right.
Why is that flashing every 10 seconds?
I suppose. Yeah, no, there's every possibility that you don't know it's happening. Absolutely. I would think at some point that we would get kind of some legal ramifications surrounding this. It's been kind of a gray area lately of what is and isn't a violation of a person's rights. Like, can you take a picture of somebody and put it on your social media feed? we talked about this a little bit in one of our early episodes. And at some point, if this becomes a device, if it does catch on, then you would think a lawsuit would not be far down the road after it gets here. And maybe the same thing is true. Maybe you're not so worried about people turning earbuds into microphones if you don't use your phone that way, or if, for me, I'm a non-texter, actually. For a guy who does a technology podcast, I know that makes me behind this.
I've received texts from you.
You have. Don't tell people that. I don't want anybody to know. So I don't mind texting people. I don't want people to text me and expect me to answer it. If you need my attention enough to bother me, right, then call me. And if you don't need my attention enough to bother me, then forget it. I'll get back to you when I get back to you. That's my thing with texting. Is like I don't want to carry my phone around. I'm not a slave to my phone the way other people are. I will happily leave my phone at home when I go somewhere, or my phone's in the other room all day, and I never even necessarily interact with it. That's just me. But so that means that the whole earbuds thing doesn't concern me very much, whereas the sort of like, I don't know. So, I mean, I think each of these has kind of its trade-offs where some of them are going to bug some people more than others, which is why this is an interesting segment. So we will put up a poll at the Good Talk Twitter channel. We would love to hear your input on what you think. This is another good place to feel free to give us a call and leave a message on it, or shoot us an email via the page. Just let us know what your thought is of which of these is, if you had to choose, as the segment is called, which of these is the privacy, not necessarily intrusion, the privacy incursion. I'm going through a thesaurus in my head and looking for a term that isn't scary, but I guess,
choose wisely.
Anything that happens on the privacy is anyway. Which of these privacy possibilities is the most concerning to you? Let us know.
Hey, how are you liking the podcast so far? Don't tell me. Take some time, go to iTunes, find our podcast, give us a nice 5-star rating, be honest, give us constructive feedback in the comments. This will help us not only make more episodes, more intriguing content, but also help more people discover us. Thanks a lot.
Time for segment 4. Segment 4, let's dig some more, where it's sticking. Eric's over there chuckling at my ridiculousness with my rhyming segment title. But segment 4 is when we go back to topics that we've covered in earlier episodes, when events have happened since, and we want to share with you the latest developments. We have 2 big ones today. We've been talking for the last couple of episodes about the election. And last episode, we discussed a group of kids who decided to sue the United States government over climate change. And we've got some updates to share from each of those. So first of all, with regard to the election, we discussed fake news and the degree to which it may or may not have impacted, people's overall decisions. And in the sort of like looking for a scapegoat for what happened, there's been an awful lot of attention being given to fake news and whether social media is kind of complicit in the delivery of that non-fact.
And, as we've said previously, without a doubt, both Facebook and Twitter contributed heavily to that. Predominantly Facebook in the news, but if you think about it and go back to, the days when Facebook and Twitter were competing against one another for social media dominance, Facebook launched a share button, right? So then people were sharing all this content into Facebook. They predominantly did that to start to compete with Twitter because it was so easy to start sharing things on Twitter versus Facebook. Then, similar to Twitter, Facebook launched Trends, right? Twitter had Trends for quite some time. Twitter was being kind of co-opted by Facebook. Facebook would literally take trends from Twitter and put them on Facebook, right? But then, Facebook Trends came under pressure because their algorithm really wasn't an algorithm, and there was humans behind it, and they were curating it, and that was causing grief on many sides and whatnot, right? And then bias was revealed in those trends due to the curation of what's included, what's excluded, right? And then fake news, like you would not believe, gets propagated exponentially throughout the network. And then it's like
This is once they let an algorithm take over, or this was when humans were doing it.
I mean, inherently, just to the sharing alone, right?
Right.
But there's a progression from making sharing as easy as possible, right?
Yeah.
Adding trending component, both algorithmic and human curated. Then the human curation bias was revealed, right? Things being taken out, things being put more towards the top.
And I had read kind of a back and forth on whether humans or algorithms were going to be the thing that caused the more, I don't know, bad, for lack of a better term. That there's the bias of humans, there's the that going through, but then when they first kind of switched to let more of the computer decide, then more stuff got through that a human would have had a sniff test to not let that through. So.
Right.
I, on some level, I do, as much as we're going to come back and slam Facebook later, I do feel that they're a little bit beleaguered and kind of can't win when it comes to this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, in this day and age, any site that helps people find information, discover information, present information to people, there's implications as to how they do it, right?
For sure.
Whether it's right or wrong, someone has to take responsibility for it and figure out what is the best way to do it. I don't think there's one solution, but clearly I think, this election has brought this major challenge to light in a bigger way than that's ever been presented.
And Facebook did respond over the last week. Mark Zuckerberg specifically responded via his Facebook page. And he was pretty... I mean,
after denial, now I would say he's retracted that denial.
Right. He's at least coming around to, I guess we were a factor. Because at first, as we mentioned previously, he was like, no, what are you talking about? Of course, Facebook is not one of the ways that people, discover their news, false or otherwise. And then it was kind of like, well, okay, maybe they get some fake news from us, but totally tiny little bit, like almost none at all, right? So he's been doing some backpedaling, and this last statement, again, because we talked about the kids who found the algorithm that immediately flagged things and kind of made that all go away. So
in what, 2 days?
It was less than 2 days.
Oh, wow.
It was like 36 hours of hackathon. Like it was a bottle of Mountain Dew and some code. And so his response is pretty party line. It's not very. The problems here are complex. I'm now reading specifically from it. Both technically and philosophically, we believe in giving people a voice, which means erring on the side of letting people share whatever they want. We need to be careful not to discourage sharing of opinions, et cetera, et cetera. He outlines a set of steps that they may or may not take, that they're considering. The first and strongest is stronger detection. He calls that the most important thing we can do to improve our ability to classify information. It means better technical systems to detect what people will flag as false before they actually have to do it. Easier reporting. Now, this is part of his response that I didn't quite see. I wasn't on the same page as him, because he says, well, we depend on our community to flag things that are false. Everybody can flag stuff.
Yeah, but I thought you could only report things that are against their community guidelines.
Well,
not
I don't
necessarily
even see
false.
where to do that, right? So I'm going to go onto my Facebook account right now, and I'm going to look for the first article somebody shares, which is it's you, actually. That's
it must
weird.
be fake.
And it's a picture of the traffic that was you were stuck in getting here tonight. On the 405, and it looks like a Christmas candy cane of red taillights and white taillights. Now, this was shared via ABC7, the local news affiliate. And I'm looking at the interface, and I don't see, like, comment, share down at the bottom,
right.
Like page, and then ABC. There's the fact that you shared it publicly. In terms of the interface, so now there's two possibilities, right? Because it's not standing out, that's for sure.
Right. Is there an arrow in the upper right, though?
Yes.
There you go.
So that's what I was saying is the two possibilities. There's one by your name, hide post, unfollow Eric, hide all from ABC7. Okay, there it is. Report post.
Yeah, but I think that's like community guidelines.
Well, let's find out. Help us understand what's happening. What's going on? It's annoying or not interesting?
Nope.
I think it shouldn't be on Facebook.
Nope.
It's spam.
Nope.
None of those this is a false article. How was your experience getting help with this issue? And then there's a set of 5 smiley faces.
Shitty.
I'm going to go with, I'm going to go with Luke Shitty, the second to last. It does say, and then it's asking me what went wrong. How could it be better?
Everything.
There's another one up top, and this looks to be the same thing, right? There was one down by your name and one on the top. So to their defense, despite both of us kind of not thinking it existed, there is a tiny light gray down caret that gives you some ability to get in there and
but it's not addressing truth or falsehood.
It really isn't. Report post, turn on notifications for this post. Yeah, there's nothing in there that says bullshit,
right?
Which is what we're looking for, right?
But I think, candidly, in their defense, I think what will happen though, once that is added, both sides, whether they agree with it or not, whether they know it's true or not,
right,
there's going to be a lot of false positives.
And Facebook has struggled against the thumbs down for this same reason, right? Because they you run into a few of these things. The ability to edit your post. Facebook has it. Twitter doesn't. Everybody says, why the hell can't I rewrite a tweet? And I agree, except here's my user experience design hat. There is a use case that where there there's the ability to do harm, and that would be I share a photo of a puppy dog licking a kitty cat, right? And hooray, everybody loves it. Hearts, hearts, hearts. And then I go back and edit the post and say, I sure,
oh no,
do hate the other political guys. Did you never think of that before? Am I the only one who's ever thought about this possibility? And I just wrecked Facebook. Somebody must be doing that, right?
I'm sure.
It's a possibility. I assume that's why Twitter has never offered the edit possibility, because I would think in theory I could change the content. Now, similarly, there is the ability to go back and see the edits that a person made.
Right.
So theoretically,
it's pretty obscure.
It's pretty obscure. It's similar to the report post in terms of how you do it. So, the casual browser who sees my terrible, whatever pornographic death threat, violent post that used to be a puppy dog kitty cat, is not gonna probably know what I did. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, but these are some of the complications. So again, I'm, coming to their defense a little bit, although, as we mentioned last week, the damage is done. The time for them to do this kind of self-reflection on their participation in an election is, not after the election results have come in.
Right. So not only was fake news prevalent, but a recent Stanford study basically realized or identified the fact that most students can't even or don't even know when news is fake.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it just makes the inherent problems we just talked about even worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, to quote a stat, 82% of middle school students couldn't distinguish, and this is a little different but related, an ad labeled sponsored content and a real news story on a website.
Really? So, like, full on, it says on it, this is sponsored, and they didn't make that distinction that might mean that there's, a point of view behind it?
Exactly.
Wow. I gotta say, I've brought up before, the focus in our education system on critical thinking is not what it should be.
Right.
And I don't know why. I honestly can't put a finger on it, why nobody prioritizes that, including teachers, frankly.
Sure.
Probably exhaustion. Probably they've had to give up. There's a degree to which because you try to pound into kids' heads, like, look, you have to have a source, right? And
right.
When we were kids, not to...
Bibliography.
Exactly.
Card
right?
catalog.
They do have to do bibliographies still, but there is kind of this sense of like, but I Googled it. So
what was it? Standard & Poor's? No, not Standard & Poor's. What was it's like this classic, like...
Strunk and White?
Yes,
yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. I think I have a copy of it actually over there somewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
There's another one
the
too,
kind of
but
definitive
that's the one.
Writer's guideline. Yeah, no, I mean, at some point we might as well just get our canes and start. When I was your age, and we had to, but yep. And I mean, for good reason, if the fact of the matter is that they're not able to distinguish, right? So now we take the two statistics and put them together. We determined last week that 60% of people get their news from Facebook. We now know that 80% of middle schoolers cannot tell the difference between a clearly not even just a fake story, but a labeled story that wasn't just straight up journalism. And you do some math, and you find out that we're at roughly half of people are... just full on going to be completely misinformed. So that system is broken.
Right.
And there's nothing else to say about that than that system is broken. We might as well move on from here. Clearly, everyone, you should be getting your news entirely from podcasts.
Yes, us.
Because we are the source of truth. Unlike all the other people who tell you they're the source of truth. We're the ones you should believe. Speaking of which... Last week, we spoke about the case that came up in Oregon where a group of kids got together. They were backed by an organization, and they decided to sue the United States government over climate change. And essentially, the idea was, okay, we're guaranteed in the Constitution the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. United States government, you have known for a long time that... fossil fuels contribute to the degradation of our environment. You are nonetheless involved in building infrastructure that continues to
violate their rights.
Yeah, violate their rights. Now you had kind of a feeling that like, look, you can't sue the government for everything.
Well, I think I
am reading between the lines. That was kind of your reaction. You were playing devil's advocate and questioning.
Right. Like, have they driven a car? Have they consumed non-perishable things?
Yeah. That was the point that you were making, was that essentially these kids themselves were at least
like,
somewhat
are they
culpable.
contributing to the very problem they're suing the government for?
Right. And look, they probably are, but, just because I... trip and fall on a rake in my yard doesn't mean I can't sue you for tripping and falling on a rake in your yard. Anyway, the reason we want to do a follow-up here, we had some correspondence with a gentleman who was actually involved in the organization that did the suing. And he had a couple of... Did the suing? That's the right phrase, right? He had a couple of points that he wanted to bring up. He did say, he tweeted with me and Eric, he sent 4 tweets where he gave kind of further information, and then I exchanged an email with him, and he said, for the most part, you got the essence of the lawsuit right, by the way, and I really enjoyed hearing your reactions to it. So, as I said, we're the source of truth for everybody. To go through his tweets and kind of further share information, one of the things he pointed out was that the Youth v. Gov plaintiffs aren't all from Oregon. There's also kids from New York, Hawaii, Washington, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Florida, Louisiana, and Arkansas. So it's kind of a big thing.
Right.
And again, he is he's a climate law fellow and a social media strategist for the organization Our Children's Trust, which is the group that kind of brought this all together. So as we mentioned, there's definitely some grown-ups involved. So it's hard to say to what extent the kids are the champions of everything versus the grown-ups. Certainly the kids are involved.
Team effort.
They spoke in the court. Yeah, for sure. So not just a team effort, but it sounds like a team effort from all over the place. He also said, you asked if the U.S. was mostly to blame, or we raised the question of, the degree to which the U.S. could sue other countries. And I mentioned, look, no, if anything, the other countries are going to sue us. He said his claim, and I don't have a source here just to speak of journalism integrity, but I have no reason to disbelieve him. He says, yes, the U.S. is responsible for 28% of carbon pollution in the atmosphere. And there's 197 countries in the world. It's kind of a fluctuating number.
Yeah, so give or take.
It's in the ballpark of 200, 200, whatever, 10. So, we should be, if all things were equal, we're a country of 300 million. China's a country of 1.6 billion.
Yeah, I'd be interested how they came up with that.
The percentage of culpability.
Yeah.
I assume you're going to do some ballpark estimates across, the output of an average factory, the number of factories, the output of a car, the number of cars, the output of the average cow, the number of cows, and kind of do the math across the country. Is it 28%? And I'll give you that accuracy down to even that, that units place? Probably not. But do I believe it's within a percentage or two? Yeah, probably so. Obviously, the point of the story is that the U.S. is a disproportionate polluter, and so he brought that up. We had considered the question, but this is where it gets more interesting. Is the follow up questions, the places where we weren't quite sure, what was going on. Oh, there's one more thing we should bring up. We questioned a little bit, or not. We raised an eyebrow at the judge writing in her decision that science is not disputed. And not that I happen to disagree with that. I just thought it was an unusual thing for a judge to outright say, look, she was saying this isn't a case about whether or not the science is correct. This is a case about whether or not it's okay, really, to go after the government for their portion of contribution. And he pointed out that this was actually backed up by the Department of Justice themselves. They actually say in their statement, we do not question the science. He highlighted that in the tweet.
I'd like to thank them also for visiting our site.
The Department of Justice came to the site, yeah. They did not tweet us.
They did not.
But they may very well have listened to the podcast last.
It did freak out my wife initially.
It should a little bit. I didn't share that little nugget of information. Department of Justice, if you're listening,
come again.
Good job, guys. Please leave a comment on iTunes and let everybody know how much you're appreciating the podcast. But then the most interesting thing he shared is we were questioning, sort of what the objective of a lawsuit like this is. Are they looking for damages? How does that break down? And we, not being lawyers, didn't have the full, sense of how that would actually work. And he shared the actual... what do you even call it? See, this is how much I'm not a lawyer, right?
Document?
the suit, the initial, like the suing papers. I think they're probably called. And the things that they're asking for are on page 99 of 100. We were looking at the decision that the judge had issued. We didn't see the initial, the paperwork that had been filed. So I'm not going to feel too terrible about not getting to page 99. But our appreciation to Mr. Morrison for reaching out to us about this. He, if you look at page 99, it gives a list of essentially 9, demands is probably the wrong word, but it's what they're looking for. And I'll just read them real fast to kind of give you a sense of what the lawsuit actually entails. One, declare that the defendants have violated and are violating the plaintiff's fundamental constitutional right to life, liberty, and life, liberty, and property by substantially causing or contributing to a dangerous concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, and that in so doing the defendants dangerously interfere with a stable climate system by our nation and plaintiffs alike. Required by our nations and plaintiffs alike. So that's interesting because it's really going after, let's set a precedent. Let's get the courts to admit that the U.S. is doing wrong. That's so no, they're not going after money. They're going after, hey, let's...
admission.
Yeah. Let's, make sure that we start explaining that there's wrongdoing here so that further stuff can happen. I assume that's what they're going for. Enjoin defendants, number 2, from further violations of the Constitution, underlying each claim for relief. So they're,
right.
They're looking to get the U.S. to stop it, which is kind of what our guess was last week. But here we have, exactly what it says. 3, declare the Energy Policy Act, Section 201, to be unconstitutional on its face. So that after this, they kind of go into specific laws that they're looking to get a court's opinion on. Department of Energy Order Number 3041, Coos Bay Terminal, et cetera, order the defendants to prepare a consumption-based inventory of U.S. CO2 emissions. So this comes back to what you were talking about.
Right.
How do we know it's 28%? Well, they want them to actively measure it. Order the defendants to prepare and implement an enforceable national remedial plan to phase out fossil fuels, retain jurisdiction over this action. So really, they're trying to get the courts. And number 9 is grant such other and further relief as the courts deem just and proper. Right. So they're really looking for the judges to step up, declare that it is so, declare that it must be fixed, lay out how it should be fixed. Right. And I would assume there's a degree to which they almost don't care. It's just give us number 1, prove that, say that, yep, they're guilty, right? Because then it opens the door for all sorts of further, legal cases. If they could just get that one as kind of an establishment of precedent.
And against other nations.
Yeah, well, again, that's international law, which is another thing. But if anything, it would almost, I would think, be a weapon for those other nations to be able to say, look, your own courts say that you're responsible for this. Your own courts ordered you to do this. So you can't just back out of the Paris Accords because Donald Trump says so, right? He's only one branch of your government, and the other branch has already, ordered that you do this or that. And he has some powers, but he doesn't have the power to back out of things. I would assume you would have to have an act of Congress to overwrite something that a federal judge put down, or a Supreme Court judge, wherever it gets to. Again, not a lawyer, but it gives us kind of a much better look at exactly what the plaintiffs were attempting in that case. So we're sharing that with you. If there's any further developments as this progresses, we'll definitely let you know. Keep an eye out for developments. Look, if anybody's going to get us to fix the planet, it's going to be a bunch of kids. So go get them, kids.